All right, well, good morning and welcome to our pro tip panel discussion on conference funding for the Office of Graduate Fellowship and Awards. Thank you guys so much for being here with me. My name is Susan Rogowski, and I'm currently serving as a graduate assistant for the office. And I want to start this morning with some introductions. So, if each of you can give a brief introduction of yourself, what organization or department you're coming from, at FSU and what role you have there. So we can start with Dr. Leventhal and then go to Jack and then Zaida.
Hi, folks. My name's Emily Leventhal, and I'm the director of the Graduate Student Resource Center. I'm new to the position, and the center is new, and we're offering travel grants. Thank you for having us today.
Hey y'all, my name is Jack Rowan. I'm a rising second-year law student here at FSU, and I'm currently the speaker of the Congress of Graduate Students, which offers a wide grant program for graduate students seeking to travel to conferences.
So hi everyone. So my name is Zida Wang. I am a PhD candidate at FSU, and now I'm pursuing my degree in museum education and visitor-centered curation at the art education department at the College of Fine Arts. And at the same time, I'm also working for the Museum of Fine Arts at FSU as a museum educator. Nice to meet you all.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. So I want to start with a broad question for all of you guys. So why do you think attending conferences is so important for graduate students, and what role do conferences play in professional development? Jack, if you want to start with this one.
Yeah, definitely. Conference travel is really important for all graduate students. It doesn't matter what you're studying. You can really gain from going to these conferences, especially when it comes to the professional development and the networking side of it. So I'll talk a little bit more about the networking. You know, as a law student, networking is one of the most important things that we do while we're here at FSU, almost more important sometimes than the classes itself, because it's the connections you build during your graduate education that can really help you find employment or other educational opportunities after you finish your degree here. So I would highly suggest that any graduate student here go to multiple conferences while they're completing their degree here at FSU.
Susan, would you like me to follow up?
Sure, yeah.
I think I am 100% on board with what Jack presented. And I think that I would also add this. I think conference travel is really important because graduate departments are often really small. Number one, meet other people that are doing what you're interested in doing in the bigger context. Build support for your intellectual endeavors beyond the walls of your department. And I think second, a great reason to attend a conference is because it teaches you to take risks. You may never have seen a conference presentation before or know how to do it, how to communicate, whether or not you can even use notes. And it forces you to push your ideas out in public and take that chance. It teaches you to accept feedback. A lot of academia and work is negative reinforcement, right? Getting constructive criticism on your work and responding to it politely on your feet is a really important skill for life. So I really hope folks give it a try.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love what you said about like getting beyond your department. I always think that it's so important to get out of not only the department bubble, but also the FSU bubble, and conferences are such an important part of that. And then Zita, did you want to add anything to that question?
Yes, so because I think the importance of attending conferences for as a graduate student, I think the most important thing is networking. So I can meet some experts, peers, and some potential collaborators from those different conferences nationally and internationally. Yeah, so I recently met a professor, yeah, that I was referring to a lot in my research paper. And then I just met him in a conference. He just walked in the conference the session, and it's like, oh, are you? I was like, are you the professor, Johnny Sedana? He's like, yes, I am. And then yeah, we left the contact info, and then now we're just emailing to each other right now. And I think this is the most important thing, networking, and also it is a good opportunity for me to get some feedback about my research, because like we are always in our comfort zone for all the time. Our professors give us feedback, give us advice, but more importantly, we need to know how other scholars, how other people think about our research. I think these are two important things. And also, I think there's another one I want to see is about the career development, because career development is also very important, because we can participate in those career sessions in those conferences as well. And recently I went to a conference a few months ago, and then my professor just introduced me to a career development session. And then I met the editor from Rome and Littlefield Publishing Group. And then we talk about a potential book publication opportunity, because we were trying to write something, me and my cohort, we are trying to write something about the digital and virtual exhibitions for small and middle-sized museums. So then we wrote a proposal to that editor, and then we got our book contract. We're about to write that book together.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Yeah, so many great stories, Zita, that you have. And I like the story about meeting the person who you'd been referring to a lot in your research. I always hear like people in my department, they kind of give you like a warning, like make sure that you're pronouncing this person's name right during your presentation, because they might be in the audience and you might not know. So, but I know that so many people get like inspired at conferences when they meet this person that they've admired and they've been studying for so long their work. So yeah, that's a great point.
And
Okay, so now, yeah, go ahead.
no, I was so excited by what Zidane was saying, because he bullet pointed so many critical issues about careers, which is that academic and implied employers are at conferences and often interviewing at conferences, and book publishers are typically there as well. And for folks in book-oriented fields like the humanities, that's so critical to establish those relationships. It's really exciting comments, Zidane.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love both of the stories that you told. So that's awesome. Okay, so now that we've got a broad overview of conferences, why they're so important, I want to get into some of the nitty gritty, especially about why we're here, conference funding. So I want to start with one of the, what I think is the cornerstone of conference funding at FSU, which is the Congress of Graduate Students conference grants. So Jack, can you give us a general overview of those conference grants that COGS provides?
Of course. So the Congress of Graduate Students for many years now has been offering a series of travel grants to graduate students wanting to go to conferences. We have these in two different buckets. We have our presentation grants and our attendance grants. Starting on July 1st, both of these grants are actually going to be increasing, with our attendance grants increasing to $180 per conference, and our presentation grants increasing to $300 for conferences within the lower 48 US states, and $600 for conferences outside the lower 48. So we're really excited about that, because we want to try to help out our graduate students get more funding for their conferences. The whole process works through our COGS website at sga.fsu.edu/COGS. You'll find more information under our funding tab about the process of applying for our COGS grants. We have a whole SurveyMonkey application for it, and I can go into further detail about that if you'd like.
Yeah, I think if you want to talk a little bit about the application process, what are some of the components that the students need, and then maybe briefly explain some of those important administrative steps that students need to take.
Definitely. So you're able to get 2 grants per fiscal year. The fiscal year is from July 1st to June 31st. So starting July 1st, you'll have 2 grants that you can use throughout that year, and that can be like 2 attendance grants, 2 presentation grants, or 1 of each. And what you do through that, it maxes out at $600. So if you get 1 international presentation grant, that's the only grant you're going to be able to get for the entire year. When you go onto the SurveyMonkey application that we have linked to on our website, you will fill out, we have a not too terribly long application where you'll fill out just some information about yourself, as well as some information about your conference. Whether you're attending or presenting, we ask that you provide proof that you've registered for the conference. If you're presenting at it, we ask for proof that you've been accepted as a presenter. Now, this can be everything from a main stage presentation to doing a poster presentation during a massive event. So there's a very broad definition of presentation here. Of any form presentation, you'll be able to get the presentation grant from COGS. In addition, we'll also ask for the name of your department's travel rep. Your travel representative is going to be the most important person in this process, because that's the person you're going to be working with once you come back from conference to help submit your expense report, put together all your receipts, and ensure that you're actually getting your grant money at the end of the day. So before you start the process of these grants, I say the first thing you should do, especially if you're new to the department, is find out who your department's travel representative is. Work with your professors to figure out who that representative is, because they are going to be the core, or they're going to be the most solid link in the chain of how you're going to get your COGS funding.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I know the department travel rep is one of the most important, hardest steps there. So I know, Zita, you had applied to a COGS conference grant and gotten one before. Can you talk a little bit about what grant you applied to, and what was that experience?
Yes, so last spring, my proposal to the cultural management conference in Berlin, Germany was accepted by the conference, and I submitted to that SurveyMonkey portal. I mean, it's very clear. It is very easy to understand. Everything's super clear compared with something that I processed in the past. So now it's super clear. So I only spend maybe probably like 20 minutes maximum or 30 minutes to process everything. And then by then I emailed my chair's assistant and said, okay, I already submitted everything. And then perhaps personally, I think you will get an email soon from the COGS and then to confirm everything. And then I think that process was not super long. The only thing is a little bit complicated because at the same time, I also work for the Museum of Fine Arts. So my supervisor at the Museum of Fine Arts, she needed to approve this as well. So that took a little bit long because everything will be a little bit complicated because like a 3 departments, trial department thing. So that was a little bit long, but it was not that complicated. In the end, I secured that $600. And then that helped me a lot because the ticket from Tallahassee to Berlin was so expensive.
Awesome.
If I can,
Yeah,
just real quick,
go ahead.
I just wanted to also mention, didn't mention it originally. So our grant is a reimbursement grant.
Yes.
I think it's really important to just put that out. So if you get COGS funding, you'll actually get that money after you come back from your conference and you provide your receipts. So I know that's something that we get asked about a lot. So sadly, you do have to kind of float some of your expenses. But once you get back, the faster you get your stuff to your department travel rep, the faster you'll be able to get reimbursed by COGS.
Yes. Yeah, everything was prepaid by myself, and then I got reimbursement.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good point to point out. Mention too that I know that I think a lot of students might not be aware, but when you travel for conferences, I think you need to submit some sort of travel authorization form, and especially for international conferences, that's really important. So Zita, can you talk a little bit about that process for you, and how you went about doing your travel authorization to go to that international conference?
Yes, because also I'm not a US citizen, I'm a Chinese. So first of all, I need to go to Miami to apply for a visa. So as an international student, yeah. And then that was another story because the office over there, so they were like a little bit harsh because they need to me secure the certain amount of bank statement, bank deposit, so make sure I will not be an illegal immigrant in their country. Yeah, so that was the first step. I got the visa, and then I remember I emailed and the FSU international offices, the CG Center for Global Engagement. They gave me a full session of tutorial session. Yeah, what kind of steps I need to follow up, and then about the international health insurance, about the international phone number, a lot of these things kind of like, and then I mean everything, because that was not my first time to Europe, so I knew everything, how it will be, so that was not too complicated. But if we have anything or any concerns, it is always good to reach out to your department and the Center for Global Engagement. They will have some special instructions, and they will send some agents to help us.
Yeah, I'm really happy to hear that your department and CGE was helpful to you for that. I know that I really admire you because I know how complicated it is for international travel in general, but especially for our international students. So I admire you and all of the other international students who go through all of those steps to go to those conferences that are so important. And then just real quick, how far in advance would you say for an international conference or really any conference, do you start planning your travel and securing your funding, and going through some of those administrative steps? How far in advance would you advise students to prepare some of that stuff?
Yeah, this is a very good question. Thanks for asking, because I think, to me personally, I knew that conference a long time ago. Yes, so I applied and I got my letter of acceptance early last spring. And then I was, yeah, I thought of that a lot of times, thinking, should I go or not? Yeah. And then I just convinced myself to go. That was a very good opportunity. Then I started to book the travels, the hotels, and the flights like 3 to 4 months ahead. And then once I booked everything, I started to apply for the COGS and the kind of for those fundings. And also I will share that a little bit later, because I also asked the conference, do they have any travel grants? Yeah, that is also a very important step, because we want to secure some internal funding from FSU, and also secure some external funding from the conference as well. So the conference told me, yeah, they do have like 150 euros. I said, okay, 150 euros. It's better than nothing. Yeah, it's better than nothing. And then, but it also the application is a little bit complicated, because they showed me a link. That website is pure German. I had to translate everything to English, but thanks to Google Translate. 3 months should be a very good time for us to prepare everything.
Awesome. Thanks for talking about that. And now that we've heard a lot about the COGS grants and especially the international grants, and we'll definitely be linking more resources to all of those, but I want to transition to a new and exciting resource that will soon be available for our graduate students. So Dr. Leventhal, can you give us a brief overview of the Graduate Student Resource Center and the travel grants that will be available through that?
Absolutely, Susan. Thank you for asking. The provost office is providing $1.3 million a year for doctoral students to travel to conferences. So we too are modeling our program after COGS, a reimbursement program with attendee and presentation grants. I think this could be a moment to say why reimbursement grants are actually a good deal, even when graduate students are out of pocket. And one of the big reasons is a grant from FSU could count against your financial aid. And that's the last thing we want, right? For you to take a deduction when we want to add value. So a reimbursement grant helps folks do that without any risk, because some folks run close to the cost of education limits on their financial aid. So once folks decide to apply to us, we want to be the payer of last resort. And that is because we will have up to $500 for attendees and up to $1,000 for presenters. And we followed COGS leadership into having a wide range on what a presentation looks like. And we'll spell a lot of that out in the policies on our website. I also want to thank COGS for giving us guidance about how to structure our funding, because we'll follow the same calendar so as to not get in COGS's way. So those deadlines will be the same as COGS. We're going to ask for a number of different documentation than the pieces of documentation than the COGS grants. The first thing is we'll ask when folks achieved candidacy in their doctoral programs, and we may broaden it later, but for now, we'll be asking for that date. We'll ask for verification that folks have completed one of the graduate skills workshops funded by the Quality Enhancement Plan. Those workshops are an hour long. They're on literature reviews, citation management, data visualization, and data analysis courses. So any programming language or analysis language from the libraries, any of those workshops count. We will also ask for the name of the travel staff member, and we'll ask for documentation that you applied, whether or not you received funding from your department and from COGS. So that email, saving those emails from COGS and from your department would be important to getting a GSRC travel grant. We would also require the same documentation for international travel that COGS requires, registering through that student international travel request system. And then finally, we'll be asking that folks document that they've signed up for an ORCID ID. That is your unique ID as a researcher to make sure that the integrity of your research is preserved. And so we'll ask you to indicate your ORCID ID in your application. Anything else you need me to say on that?
Well, I know that you guys are still working on that. Do you know when students can expect to see those grants and the application be open?
We really hope that it'll be available on the website on July 1st. We have an application in place. We have sort of a beta website right now. So it sort of just depends on marketing's availability. We have a policy all set. We have an application review process going. We have a draft application. It's just mechanics from here on out. So very much hoping July 2024.
Awesome. I'm excited for those. I would like to hear a little bit more about some of the workshops and kind of like what is the purpose of the workshop, and then also maybe talking a little bit about kind of what skills the provost office and the Graduate Student Resource Center is wanting students to develop through workshops and through presentations. I know you talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but kind of like why is the provost office offering these grants, and why do you think the conferences are so important and the workshops kind of play into that?
Okay, absolutely. I'll start with why the provost office is offering the travel grants. In making a plan for how we would facilitate doctoral student success, the QEP writers, authors, did a lit review on the kinds of things that supported staying in graduate school and finishing quickly. And one of those was building relationships and investment in the field. Well, how do we learn to invest in the field? Well, a lot of us get a lot of attachment and excitement and joy out of meeting other people that are working in the field and getting intellectual and social support from those folks. That's easy to do at a conference. Okay. And it's really hard to do in other ways. So we wanted to facilitate that by providing travel grants. And the other reason we're doing travel grants is because the QEP authors did a survey of graduate students, and over 50% of graduate students at FSU responded. And we asked a question, do you think that you are able to go to a conference? 45% said they were able, which means something's going on. Folks don't, we expected that percentage to be much higher, that folks don't have funding, or they don't think it's right for them, or they just don't know what it's about. We didn't know, but we wanted to create that opportunity.
Now that we've covered two really important FSU resources for conference funding, I really want to give the virtual mic back over to Zita to talk a little bit about finding external funding outside of FSU for attending and presenting at conferences. So Zita, can you tell us a little bit about your experience for finding and applying for that conference funding? I know you talked a little bit about it, but yeah, just going into a little bit more detail and some more stories about that.
Oh, of course. So I think maybe I can answer in from the questions you sent me yesterday. So I think how did I identify those conferences to attend? So I think this involves a strategy approach. For me personally, I started by focusing on those conferences that align with my specific research interests and my professional goals. In order to stay informed, I subscribed to academic and professional newsletters, and I also attended a lot. Of those relevant organizations like the National Art Education Association, something like this. So I can get informed all the time through social media and email newsletters. And I regularly check those websites of those key info or from those key professional associations, like the American Alliance of Museums, National Art Education Associations. And I also seek recommendations from my doctoral chair and my other supervisors and my colleagues as well, who often suggest conferences that are beneficial for both my research and my networking. And additionally, I think that is very important for us to consider because we also need to consider the conference's reputation. So is this a good conference we should take, or this is just a very small conference? It might be fun, but sometimes for professional development, yeah, we need to reconsider on this section, the quality of those previous proceedings, those quality of those previous presentations and the research that those are all very important. So I think I can answer the following question: how did you go about finding fundings and apply for? So first of all, I will try to find some internal fundings like my departmental or my college-wide fundings, like in College of Fine Arts, we do have the travel grant. It is not a lot, but it's usually about $200 to $300. For some national conferences that covers the flight tickets or some gas monies. That is usually always the first step, and then I will go to the COGS to see if for the time window, the application time window, if the conference I'm going to will be a good timing for apply for the COGS for the this time around. So that is the internal funding resources. And also I am also looking for external funding resources, like maybe from those professional organizations, like some of those organizations will give the first time presenters some kind of like awards or scholarship, but it's also very competitive. So you need to apply and you need to write something to show that you are the right person for that award. Usually I will apply for this type of fundings, awards, or scholarships. It depends on how they call them. And then that is not a lot, but sometimes they will provide you the waiver for the registration fee, or they will provide you $1,000 cover everything. I remember like 2 years ago, the first time I got external funding was from the National Art Education Association's National Convention in New York City. That was still during COVID. So that was my very first time to apply the conference. on a national wide level. So I was like, oh, I really want to go to this conference, but flying from Tallahassee to New York City is so expensive. And the hotels in New York City, they're also so expensive. So I emailed, is there any type of fundings or assistantship I can apply for? And then the National Art Education Association emailed me, said, oh, we reviewed the process, we reviewed the application, and we thought if you want, if you want to, you can apply for this equity, diversity, and inclusion scholarship. That was my very first time I've heard about that scholarship. That was pretty good. They offered me free hotel, free membership for the National Art Education Association for 1 year, and they offered me the registration waiver. So that was a very good one. And also, I will also try to see, I think, through networking is also kind of like I will try to secure the fundings. It's maybe that's not about the money itself, but through those networking at those conferences and academic circles, I can have more information about some additional fundings. Maybe there will be some fellowships, maybe there will be some other type of funding resources. Yeah, so these are like top 3 things I would like to recommend for the other scholars try to find fundings to apply for. The last question is, what are some that admin steps you had to take to secure the funding? I think the first step is always preparations, to prepare everything, what they need, like the COGS, they need all the paperwork documentation. So I got to prepare for these all documentations, gathering those necessary documents for the next step, maybe the confirmation email, a detailed statement, and like a for purpose statement explaining how attending this conference will benefit to FSU, to my personally, how this will benefit to my research, and how this will benefit to another level to my career. And then I think the last will be the post-conference reporting, because for some of those reimbursements programs, we need to resubmit something again to make sure that I did attend that conference. So those are like the post-conference reporting. That would be maybe a summary of my participation, or sometimes they will ask for some key takeaways. What you learned from this? Yeah, how you connected this research, this conference presentation with your personal research and with the university-wide beneficials. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah. Thank you for explaining all of that, Zita. And that was really great. You made so many great points. And I think one thing that I definitely want to highlight is you said at the beginning, like professional organizations and subscribing to emails.
Yes.
And this is something that I think I got at the beginning of my graduate career. One of the best advice that I ever got was read your emails,
Yes.
which I think is so hard, but it's so important. Because there's so many opportunities out there that are in your emails, just sitting there. So read your emails and find out about those opportunities. Find a professional organization. You mentioned a lot in art education and your museum work, but there's a professional organization out there for every single one of us. Talk to your department, talk to your peers about what professional organizations they're a part of, and find one for you to investigate to find some of these resources. A lot of times there's funding and conferences through those professional organizations, like you mentioned. Thank you guys so much. And I know we're kind of at the end here, so I did just want to wrap up by saying, where does the Office of Graduate Fellowship and Awards come into play with all of this, with conferences? And although the office primarily assists students with applying for external fellowship, scholarship grants, and awards to support their education at FSU, And even though the office does not specifically provide one-on-one support for students applying for conferences, we do, of course, support students in developing their ability to effectively communicate the significance of their research, which we talked a lot about here, how we do that through attending conferences and why that's so important. So OGFA does strongly encourage and support students to, of course, attend and present at conferences in order to develop all of the skills that we talked about here today. And many other resources and workshops on OGFA's websites can be used for preparing abstracts and applications for conferences and conference funding. So I encourage all of you guys watching to check out some of the upcoming workshops on OGFA's website and the workshop archive, where you can find a lot of useful videos like this one that can help you in your conference funding search. So again, get out of your comfort zone, go attend a conference, and use some of these resources to find funding for those conferences. And yeah, thank you guys so much for coming today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Very much.